is going on, guys? My name is Jay Kraft with the Facebook group All Around Pickers Lounge, and I'm here again with another very exclusive interview on the topic of online fraud within the eBay, Amazon marketplaces. We're going to be talking again regarding international sellers using counterfeit goods and the effect that it's having on your everyday seller here domestically, as well as slightly abroad too. Today I'm joined by a special guest. Brian Bonchi is here to talk with us today. How are you doing, buddy?
Awesome, brother. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there, bud. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. Last month, we had on a guest regarding the topic of VAT, tax evasion, and counterfeit goods, and sellers from China and Japan just undercutting the market on a ton of different items. And then earlier in this month, I spoke in great length regarding counterfeits within the video game sector. And after putting a post up online, you had commented and you told me that your category had been disrupted as well. What category are you working with in?
Well, when I first got started in eBay, I started originally even off of eBay with e-cigarettes, vaporizers, whether they be herbal vaporizers, whether they be nicotine-based vaporizers. However, it was something that I got really deep into e-cigarettes myself, so it's just something I kind of had a passion for, and I kind of saw that in the beginning there wasn't an e-cigarette shop on every corner like you kind of see nowadays. So it kind of opened up a little bit of opportunity in my mind, and I, of course, went in kind of full steam ahead without really doing as much research into what it's like trying to sell that kind of items on eBay, on Craigslist, on other categories where I'm competing with, like you said, some of these other people who are making, in the e-cigarette business, they call them clones. They're not
counterfeit. Let me ask you, but before we go too far in, for the people who don't know, what you say herbal. We're talking vapes. We're talking
yes.
Essentially like smokeless tobacco, right?
Exactly, yeah, like e-liquid and the nicotine-based juice. It's like the little boxes you'll see people puffing on, and it shoots out the big clouds of the vapor.
Okay, so we're talking like an alternative to tobacco.
Exactly.
And this is a product that had been selling online before you came to the market, correct?
Yeah. Now when it was selling, of course, now I think eBay has always been kind of stringent on it. So that wasn't when I first got into it. I don't think eBay was really wasn't really going to be my first source to sell, but it just is something I kind of stumbled into. And that's when, like you said, I kind of started noticing the effects that all of these other quote-unquote clones were starting to have on not just the market on eBay itself, but even in store. I mean, my local vape shops around me have had to close, point blank period, because they can't compete. You can't sell something when somebody else online is selling it for less than you're able to get it at wholesale. You're buying 15, 20, 30 units at a time, and you can't even get it as cheap as the guy selling it on eBay can, who's giving free shipping and all the other junk.
Their fees.
Exactly.
So it just cover their overhead and everything.
These guys have overhead like a shop and electricity, internet, all of that. I mean, you can't even think to incorporate half of that into your pricing at all when you're competing the way you are, you know what I mean? I think a lot of people tried to go online, but the hard part about online, like I was talking about, is eBay has become just as flooded with the race to the bottom. That's just purely what it is.
Okay, so when you first started, you obviously listed product up onto eBay, and
yes.
were you having a good experience? And also,
yes.
how long ago was this when you first dabbled on eBay with the product?
My very first time ever on eBay was probably about 3 to 4 years ago, and that was with the e-cigarettes. Now, I took about a 2-year hiatus in between selling the e-cigarettes and now finding the niche I'm in now, because e-cigarettes is such a diluted market. I had now moved over to electronics, tech, and kind of the consumer electronics end of things. But about 3 to 4 years ago, I would say would probably be the first time I started selling, and I can't lie to you, it was really well. It worked really smoothly. I mean, I didn't have any returns. I didn't have any dissatisfied customers. I felt that I was able to give people some real good deals, rock bottom prices, without really feeling like I was kind of undercutting everyone else around me. And I was just doing it right out of my apartment. So it was kind of a real intro into business and economics and supply and demand and how all of that even works. So just very quickly, you'll see from that 3 to 4 years ago to maybe the 6 months, 12-month period that I was selling them, I mean, I would say my prices were probably cut by 50, maybe even 60%, to the point so much that sometimes I was packing and shipping stuff to break even just to get rid of it, get it out of the house, because I couldn't compete because I saw a guy was already pricing me $2-3 underneath me. And just like I said, the race to the bottom will just, the next seller then, the next seller then, the next seller then. And before you know it, there's nothing. There's nothing there. I don't know how anyone else is even making a profit on it, to be honest. There's times I buy things on eBay now, and I don't understand how they're making a profit.
You're buying it personal consumption. And
yes.
You're surprised with the pricing that they have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so on the topic of counterfeits, it's something that I've had to deal with within the video game market, and other sellers have dealt with it along a ton of other categories. And the most common thing I get asked is, how can you distinguish between the authentic ones and the counterfeits, and what type of impact can or has that had on the general consumer within your category?
Very good question. Now, the first impact I would probably speak on would be just skepticism now, because now anything that you sell, immediately, if it is not 100% exactly what the buyer expected, it's inauthentic, it's a fake. And it's hard to sit there and you can't argue with the customer. I mean, in the back of your mind, you have that the buyer is always right kind of mentality, but it makes it hard going forward trying to explain, I understand why you're wary of this. I understand that eBay kind of has a reputation, which is very non-beneficial to sellers like us, that there's a lot of fakes on eBay. But I think some of the best ways to really, and I've brought some boxes along here to kind of show you, is to really look at not just the material that the product itself is made of, how it feels, how it looks, the colors, the gradency, not even just those types of things, but the packing material, the boxes they use. At least in the e-cigarette category, are usually big telltales. So now the first one I'll show you is a 100% authentic. Now what you'll kind of see here is you'll notice the shine, you know what I mean? The boxing looks very nice. It's kind of like Apple. It has a little bit of grip to it. It's not just going to fling apart, kind of like your iPhone does. You'll notice the foam isn't that cheap kind of insulation foam that falls apart. You'll notice you usually have all of your instruction booklets. You'll have a QC test. But one of the big things that really kind of helps is they'll have a scratch test. Now, Beats does this as well. A lot of the Apple AirPods I've noticed have that. And it's a serial number that you can literally scratch off of the back of the box and run it online. Now, sometimes some inauthentic products will have quote-unquote real serial numbers because of the item that they copied or replicated. But usually when that happens, there's quite a few websites that will tag them and kind of put them in the system as it's kind of likely that might be a counterfeit serial number. And then a lot of times you'll at least get tipped off by that. Now, when I show you like a fake, what you'll notice is like as I hold the box, if I just kind of lightly let go, it just fall all right apart. The box has almost no grip to it. The inside of it typically will be really, the kind of foam is kind of glued with like this real yellowish glue. I don't know if you can see it that well.
Yeah.
Just the material even itself just it doesn't feel the same. Usually has a weird odor to it, almost kind of like a factory odor. It just doesn't have the same care that you'll ever see with an authentic product. But really what the buyer typically puts together with authentic and inauthentic is how well it works. And I think that's kind of what can hurt us, because there are times where a genuine product just isn't going to work correctly. But if the first idea the buyer has is, instead of thinking that maybe the product was defective, was that it must have been junk, it must have been a clone or an inauthentic piece, and that's why it broke so easy, it's very hard to then turn that buyer's perspective around and try to ensure them, like, look, I understand where you're coming from, but I want to let you know that it is completely authentic. We're going to replace it. You want a refund, we can handle that as well. But sometimes the damage is done. If the product broke, once they're in their mind that the product is inauthentic, it's inauthentic. And that usually scars the buyer, too, going forward. So future purchases, well, now that's affected.
So this preconceived notion that they have on their head, which they've learned through their buying experiences online, and they've learned they've learned from their peers, people telling other people, hey, you got to be careful when you buy this type of stuff online, even through the video as we're making it now and putting this online. But it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. This is what I tell people, it's horrible that the consumer confidence is gone. It's gone within the category, and that you have to go through and reverse engineer and reteach people when there is an issue. It's like, hey, I'm not a scumbag. I'm not selling counterfeit goods. It's just we got the roll of the dice at 1 in 100. This is technology. This is just kind of how it is. These things are going to happen. to be able to resolve these problems now. It's absolutely crazy. But yeah, we're putting this information out there. But at the same time, the benefit to it is the hopes that we can make smarter consumers, and people are going to be able to make more wise decisions. But as you said it, the market is flooded. So when you first started, you had a good run, right? You had a good start. You were happy with the product. How long were you within the category before you said, this just isn't worth it anymore?
I would say altogether I was in the category for about a year. Now on eBay I would only say maybe about 10 months, and I would say after about 3 or 4 months it was kind of like the gravy train was kind of over, and now it was everyone's at war for the price. And what I kind of noticed, especially when that started happening, is that prices got so low that they were under what I was getting the authentic products for at wholesale value. And I was absolutely baffled by this at first, because I understood fakes and counterfeits, but at that point in time, my understanding of fakes and counterfeits were a fake Rolex, a fake cell phone. It wasn't something that was very inexpensive to begin with. So it kind of baffled me that someone would go through and quote-unquote clone a product that wasn't that expensive to start with. But what it made me do is it made me do some research. And as I started to do that, I started realizing that there is still a lot of profit in cloning inexpensive things, especially when you can make an inexpensive product in China, have it shipped over here still, and it look exactly like the original that sells for $60, only you can get it made for close to $2 or $3, shipped with DHL to your door for maybe $7, $8 a piece. Now you can sell it at $30, $35 a piece. You've undercut everyone by half. You're going to have 10, 15 cha-chings in just a matter of a couple hours if it's a hot selling product. So it's just as soon as that starts.
They're basically gutting the market by using these counterfeits. And believe it or not, that's something that we've seen countless times with other products. And I would have, and that's the same idea that I had, is that, this product's so cheap. How is it possible that it's worth the trouble? And then I explained to people, I had my game store, and we had games in there that were maybe $12 or $13 games, okay? And I had seen my first counterfeit one 6 years ago, before it was even a thing on eBay, before counterfeits were even a thing online. And I saw the game that somebody had brought me, and I'm like, how did you get this? Like, where did you possibly find this game as a counterfeit? Because it was such a low value title. And now I go online and I could literally find hundreds of the same one. And then when you learn, this can be produced for about 60 cents. And I'm sure in your case, 2, 3, maybe even as much as, let's be wild and say it cost them $10 to produce a counterfeit. Okay? They're still making it hand over fist, because when you look at your wholesale cost and even the business's wholesale cost, they're producing them cheaper than the business itself can produce them for. And they're probably getting a larger profit margin than the business, when they sell it to a wholesaler, can possibly make. So everyone's getting screwed the whole way through and through. You have the actual business itself, you have all of the professional resellers, and every single consumer, all affected by one group of people, which is the manufacturer and distributor of counterfeit goods for these products.
Now here's the hard part, though, and here's what I learned very quickly. Counterfeiting, as far as the legality, the litigious side of things, only works if, one, you have someone to go after. You can't just go after some company in Beijing, China. You have no one to go after. So you need to be able to pinpoint where exactly these are coming from to begin with. But the second thing is that a lot of these products aren't, at least on my side, not on your side, but they're not IP. They're not intellectual property. No one is inventing anything. It's a rebrand. And if you know what a rebrand or a private label is, or any of those types of things, it's typically, there's multiple of the same exact kind. There might be small variances, whether it be color, shape, weight, how it holds, what it holds, things like that. And there'll be slight variances with a really catchy name and a great marketer behind it, and the product will do well. One of the companies who I had some of the most trouble with was I was working directly with a company called Green Co Science, who makes an herbal vaporizer. And they hit me with a Vero on eBay itself, even though they knew I was buying their product, because at the point that I had given up at selling vaporizers, I was just blasting them out. Look, I just want to get rid of them. I want to move on to another thing to sell in my life. This has just become a hassle. So I blasted them out. And I guess they had something set so that when a price went below a certain point, they would just flag it as it has to be inauthentic, because they weren't selling it that cheap, so how could a seller be selling it that cheap? So I got hit, and even though I reached back out to Greenco and all that stuff, it never came off. So to this day, still on that account, it'll show that I got hit with a Vero hit on a company that I had an authentic product for and was buying directly from them. So it's just the company, I can understand their frustration, but they kind of are almost they don't know how to handle it either. And I think that's the hard part, is they don't know.
Well, there's no one really going out there, producing content, and there's no one really at eBay that you can pick up the phone and say, like, hey, this is what's going on. I mean, there's certain account specialists deep in on certain categories and stuff.
Yeah.
There's people at the customer service at eBay that we're never going to have a reason to talk to in our entire lives, but there's a lot of room for improvement still. I have great at length talks with eBay regarding counterfeit, and even speaking with their small business ambassador teams and everything. But I explained many times before that at the speed at which you can pull down counterfeits, they're coming back up tenfold. There's just no way to slow down the problem at this point without radical overhauls and changes, kind of like in the sense of what we're seeing with Amazon, when you're working with specific brands, having to, get them in.
I do have something for you, though, and I've brought this up before, and I don't know why this hasn't been implemented just as a security feature. Because I moved over to electronics consumer goods, the returns as far as swap outs are very prevalent. So something I had to learn very quickly is make sure I'm tracking serial numbers, photo, video, whatever I have to do, make sure that I'm covered, my bases are covered. I understand that most people don't want to post serial numbers on listings because it's public information, and it allows someone to basically claim your device even though it might not be there. So either claim your manufacturer's warranty, claim something somewhere. I understand that most people don't want to give that out. But if eBay would just put a little box in there, as far as my kind of products go, e-cigarettes, even the Beats headphones, any Apple products, I mean, the amount of counterfeit Apple cases alone is ridiculous, and all of them have serial numbers. So if you just put the serial number in a little box, kind of like you put your MPN or your UPC code in, but that box would just be hidden from the buyer, and just eBay would have it. So eBay now has this serial number. They can run it into their system, and if it comes back that that's a serial number commonly used with a counterfeit good, they can ask for, where did you get this product? How did you get this product? Before we allow you to possibly hurt the brand of eBay, which is a billion-dollar corporation, why they don't have more investment in protecting themselves like that, I don't know.
Well, the problem with that is that we're talking about good consumers here doing the right thing.
Yes.
And we always have to, whenever we talk to eBay about making change, we have to say, what would the biggest scumbag in the world possibly do? And what he would do is he would just jam in different serial numbers every single time and send out boxes full of sand. And then when the consumer gets it, it says, well, what's the serial number on your product? Oh, it doesn't match the serial number that we have here. So the thing is, it's difficult to know that we're working on a platform where 97% of the people on the platform are good, honest sellers, but we have to make these radical changes to appease 3% of the people that are really screwing it up for everyone else. Now, there's one other thing on the topic of these e-cigs and vapes, and just for those who don't understand, you have your hardware, your actual, your vaporizer device that you smoke out of, and then you also have your liquids that go within the product. Something we haven't touched on is just the absolute danger behind counterfeits, because we have the dangers of faulty batteries and vessels within the actual vaporizing product, and then we also have the dangers of really low quality, like all PG liquids or propylene glycol liquids, which is a filler that they put inside of there. Can you talk with people about just how honest to God life-threatening this issue can be?
And it's funny that you say that, because it really is, and this isn't to be dramatic, it really is life-threatening when it comes to things like vaporizers and e-cigarettes, because this is something you're inhaling, you're bringing it into your body, into your lungs. So you touched on the juices, and don't even get me started. About 3 years ago, I would say that, I don't know if it was like the CDC or the FDA, someone came out and said, look, if you want to continue to sell e-liquid, everyone's got to start getting their juices tested by batches, and we're going to start putting all these regulations on things, and we're going to stop having people vaping rat poison with lead in it. So when they started doing this, the amount, I think I read one list that had close to 4 or 5 pages that I flipped through with American-made juices, made here in the USA, that had ingredients in it that you would find in like your car, and just all these crazy things, because either people were making it in garages and unsanitary environments, people were making it over in factories and sweatshops in other countries, and the stuff that you were literally vaping inside of your lungs, you would never want to touch a vaporizer again if you saw some of the stuff that was in it. And then you have the coils. I think I even have a coil here.
Explain to people what a coil is.
Yeah, when you get these vaporizers, in a sense, so a vaporizer works in a couple different ways. So when you buy a vaporizer like this, a consumer vaporizer like I would buy, I use what is called like a pod system. So this is just a pod that holds the liquid, and a coil is then inserted into the bottom. When that coil, which is basically just Kanthal, nickel, some kind of alloy wrapped around a piece of cotton, when that's hit with the electricity, it heats up, kind of like a car cigarette lighter. When you see the little coil on a car cigarette lighter heats up. That heats up, it burns the liquid that's on the cotton, not the actual cotton itself, and thus you get the quote-unquote water vapor, but is actual ingredients. And you get the sensation that you're actually smoking something. You're able to get your nicotine fix if that's what you're going for. And it kind of is, to be honest, it was actually a pretty solid solution from what I'm seeing still. The results are still coming back, but a pretty solid solution to trying to at least cut down and quit smoking. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't sit here and tell you that it's healthier than smoking. I'm not going to say that I'm a vaping advocate. I vape myself, but I do believe it's a lot better than smoking cigarettes. But if you're vaping counterfeit goods, no, you can't. You're literally probably smoking things like soda cans, the same kind of aluminum that's in soda cans, which has been already, the carcinogens in that alone to cause cancer. Countless tests have already proved that. And there's no regulation. There's no company here inside the United States or even abroad that's saying, hey, someone is going to be ingesting this. Maybe we should be testing this to make sure there's no lead in any of the alloys. Let's make sure that the cotton is sanitized before it's heated and helping juice turn into vaporizers that I'm ingesting into my lungs. There's so many areas that we could be testing and regulating the market, and yet we're not. And I think that's what made me really get away from e-cigarettes as a whole, at least on the sales end, is because I saw the way the market was moving. I saw the way that 5-10 years from now, when someone does get lung cancer and they decide to start suing some of these manufacturers, or they start deciding to sue distributors, vape shops, whoever, I don't want to be around for that because there's no regulation. It's the wild, wild west. There's quite a few actual marketplaces even on eBay that are like that. And it's baffling to me sometimes that I guess maybe you're able to circumvent the rules enough to be allowed to sell on eBay, even if it's a product that you really shouldn't be selling. But the amount of products on eBay that could do actual harm to you just because of the simple fact that they're counterfeits and not regulated whatsoever, it is a lot more than I'm comfortable with, to be honest with you. A lot more. And it's hard because there's no one to step up and try to do that. And every time someone does, you saw a little bit of a backlash, at least here with me in the United States, when the FDA really tried to step in really hard with e-cigarettes. They came in and they started saying, look, all juice needs to be made in these types of lab, an ISO lab. It needs to be completely sanitary. They need to have all the facial masks on. They need to have everything. The juices need to come from only trusted suppliers that we've already tested. All of these things incorporated. And I think what people saw was that a lot of the littler guys, that even though they were doing good business, they were doing the right thing, they were using high-quality ingredients, it was all so expensive to try to implement a system to check and checks and balances. It just wasn't feasible for a lot of companies. So mass amount of companies start going out of business, and it caused protests.
Well, the problem is that it is feasible, but not in a world where I could be, Jay's oil production, and I can have my clean lab, and I can have all my equipment, but you know what? I got to sell the bottles. I got to sell them for $45 a piece. Because I built this whole infrastructure out. But my product with my name on it is being sold by somebody else that didn't get it from my factory and my facility for $20 a bottle. Okay? And that's where the real issue comes in. Most of the time, it's not about brands not wanting to conform to the rules that are put out there. We all want to do good business, and we all want to have the highest quality, product when it comes to it. Good business owners do. But there has to be incentive and guarantees for the time, money, and effort that we're going to put into something like that.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's where it becomes really hard because there's, as far as I know, at least I haven't thought of a way for eBay at least to really step in and figure out how to do that other than just us as consumers reporting when we get what we think is a fake product, report that seller. But even that can only go so far because then eBay has to look from the standpoint of what if it's competition reporting you? What if you're selling authentic products, the guy sees you're doing better, and he decides to report you? So I understand that eBay is kind of in this position of we don't really know how to handle it, but I think that somewhere something has to change because
well, right
it's
now
spread
there's just no
multiple.
risk. There's no risk.
Yeah.
If I want to go on there and I want to create a brand new account, get a brand new PayPal, tether it up with a throwaway account, and I want to go up and I mature my account slowly. I build it up over like 3 months, good feedbacks. Get my limits increased. I can get my limits up to $25,000 within 3 months' time, and then I want to flood the market with counterfeit goods after I've got a couple hundred positive feedbacks in my back pocket. It's not hard. And here's the thing, I make my $25,000, $30,000, $40,000, and then eBay finally steps in and says, "Hey, you're off the platform. Cool. I'll see you again in 3 months."
Money, yeah. I'll make another account and do it again.
Yeah, I'll be back in 3 months. I appreciate all the money. Thanks for your time and trouble.
Okay.
Okay, Brian, before I let you go today, I like to ask an important question. I feel this video might end up in front of the eyes of eBay, but obviously it's going to end up in front of the eyes of consumers. What is the last thing you want to leave with them? Final thought, anything to that effect?
My biggest thing, at least for the consumer, would just be don't let one bad apple kind of ruin the bunch. So if you are a consumer and you've gotten a bad product, you've gotten a fake, you've gotten that before, don't let that ruin eBay as a whole for you. Now, for eBay, I would just like for them to really ask themselves what side of this you want to fall on when it all comes to a head. Because the way this is spreading, because you've seen it now in video games, because we're seeing it now in the e-cigarettes, because we're seeing it now in any kind of holistic market, so holistic things like the kratom and all these other type of things, the fakes and the amount of products that are being sold on eBay without any kind of vetting because of that is it's going to allow eventually some type of harm to come. And you don't want to see that, and you don't want to see the platform be hurt in any type of way because eBay has done so much good, and it has brought millions of people together, millions of sellers, consumers together in one place like nobody else has before. And to see something like this, the counterfeit goods, to kind of slither its way in and just cause total disruption, it's just kind of hurts me a little bit. It really does. And however it needs to get done, whatever we need to do, if I as a seller need to jump through more hoops, if I as a seller have to prove where I'm getting product from, I'm all about it. As long as it cleans up the marketplace and it, in the long run, makes all of our lives better and all of our businesses better, I'm 100% for it.
You sound just like every other real seller that I get the chance to speak with in the sense that, that eBay is kind of like our baby. A lot of us sellers have been on the platform I've been on the platform 12 years. Some people I know have been on the platform 20 years. It just blows my mind. And, there's people who can go on there and they're completely oblivious to the things that are happening. But, I mean, we see counterfeits. You didn't even touch base on electronics, clothing.
Yeah.
Car parts is another one that we got to get somebody
Car
on
parts,
for.
and that's a very dangerous part. That's the one I didn't touch on at all.
Yeah, and there's just so many categories where it's getting really out of control. But we're certainly going to have to continue this conversation another day. I really hope that we do get a solid response from eBay.
Yeah.
So, Brian, I can't thank you enough for coming
Thank
on
you.
board, for being on here today. So thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, we'll be on the air again here soon. Okay, buddy?
Awesome. Have a good one.
You too.